She left in a black dress, leaving a test with 2 stripes on the table. But this is not a story about loss. This is a story about how the fire of revenge burns even ashes. Watch it to the end, or you will regret it. The amber light of sunset bled through the blinds, striping the hardwood floor like prison bars. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a cold mug of coffee I hadn't drunk. Emily's red dress hung on the back of the bedroom door, the same one she'd worn 7 years ago, on our anniversary, when I'd forgotten our reservation at Aylmer. Now it swayed faintly, a ghost of the woman I thought I'd married. The dress had always been too bold for her, but she'd insisted it made her feel seen. Funny how symbols rot. The front door clicked open. Her heels tapped a staccato rhythm down the hall, too confident, too careless. She paused in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the fading light. For a heartbeat, she looked like the girl I'd proposed to on that rickety Coney Island Ferris wheel, all wild curls and reckless smiles. Then she stepped into the room, and the illusion shattered. Her eyes were flat, her mouth a slash of burgundy lipstick. She didn't sit. Didn't touch the wedding photo on the mantel where we stood soaked in rain, laughing under a broken umbrella. Instead, she leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. The words came like a scalpel. "I'm seeing someone." The mug cracked against the counter. Coffee pooled around my fingers, hot and bitter. 3 years since the miscarriage. 3 years of sleeping back to back, of conversations that died in our throats. I'd buried myself in spreadsheets and client calls, let the silence between us calcify. Now she broke it with this. A co-worker, she added, as if naming his profession sanitized the betrayal. Michael Barnes. I knew the name. His father had been the CFO I'd fired for stealing pension funds. Coincidence? Her voice stayed steady, rehearsed. It's just excitement. Something alive. I laughed, a hollow sound that startled us both. Alive? The word curdled. Our daughter's nursery had been painted sunflower yellow. We'd argued about it. Emily wanted periwinkle. It's just paint, I'd said. She'd cried for hours. When the door slammed behind her, the house exhaled. I didn't move. The red dress taunted me from its hook. In the bathroom trash, beneath crumpled tissues, I found the pregnancy test. Positive. Dated 2 weeks prior. My knees hit the tiles. The wallpaper, peeling at the edges where she'd once hung framed sonograms, seemed to pulse. 7 years. 7 years of her picking at her cuticles until they bled, of me pretending not to notice. I'd mapped her loneliness in spreadsheets. 73% fewer date nights post-miscarriage, 89% less physical contact. Cold numbers to explain warm flesh. Outside, a car engine growled to life. Through the window, I watched her reverse down the driveway, brake lights flaring like warning flares. The dress swayed again. This time, I yanked it down, the fabric tearing at the seams. Threads clung to my fingers, red as guilt, red as the hospital gown she'd worn when they wheeled her away, empty. I'd thought silence was safe. Now it roared. The law office smelled like lemon polish and regret. I slid the manila envelope across the desk, its contents slick with the sweat of my fingerprints. The lawyer, a balding vulture in a too-tight suit, clicked his tongue as he flipped through the photos. Emily laughing at a cafe, her hand grazing Michael's wrist. Emily boarding a train, overnight bag slung over her shoulder. The timestamp, October 12th. Our anniversary. Adultery requires proof of consummation, he said, not looking up. My jaw tightened. Consummation. As if betrayal had a threshold. I tossed another photo. Emily's hotel keycard, the Belmont Suites, room 214. The lawyer's eyes gleamed. This'll do. Outside, Rain needled the pavement. I walked 3 blocks before vomiting into a storm drain. The photos had cost $8,000, a private investigator who'd smelled desperation like blood. But the real price was the date stamp on the hotel receipt. October 12th, the day I'd left Emily crying over cold lasagna while I closed the deal. Her voice on the office voicemail, "Jacob, it's our never mind." Her journal hid under the mattress, spine cracked like a secret. Pages fluttered open to a sketch, a sunflower, petals edged in charcoal smudges. April 15th, he forgot the nursery color again. I painted the walls alone. Yellow like he wanted. It looks like sickness. Then, the entries darkened. July 3rd, he sleeps on the couch. Says my crying disrupts his focus. September 8th, Michael brought me coffee. He asked about the scar on my wrist. No one's asked in years. My thumb smudged the ink. The scar, a thin white line from her suicide attempt at 19. I promised to never let her feel that invisible again. Promises are kindling. The last entry, October 11th, told him I'm pregnant. He said, "We'll discuss it tomorrow." Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The date glared. The test in the trash. Mine. Lightning split the sky. The journal slipped from my hands, splayed open like a wound. She found me in the nursery. Rain lashed the windows, the yellow walls now jaundiced in the stormlight. The pregnancy test lay between us, a plastic judge. "You didn't even ask," she said, voice raw. Her arms crossed over her stomach, protective. I stared at the crib we'd never assembled, its parts still boxed in the corner. Dust coated the mobile, tiny elephants frozen mid-trumpet. "Whose is it?" The words tasted like rust. Her laugh was a shattered thing. "You think I'd let him touch me?" She stepped closer, the test crinkling in her fist. "You did this. You left me here to rot." The room tilted. Flashbacks, her curled on the bathroom floor after the miscarriage. Me pacing outside, phone pressed to my ear, rescheduled meeting. The doctor's words, "It's no one's fault." Lies. Fault had nested in the silence. She threw the test at my chest. It bounced, clattering into the shadows. "Congrats, Jacob. Your father." The door slammed. Brake lights bled through the curtains. In the nursery, the mobile spun lazily, elephants dancing to a dirge. The locksmith arrived at dawn, his van idling in the driveway like a hearse. I handed him a wad of cash, the bills still warm from the ATM. His fingers, stained with nicotine and grease, lingered on the keys as he drilled. The sound echoed through the hollowed-out house, each metallic screech erasing another fragment of Emily's presence. Her perfume lingered in the foyer, a ghost of jasmine and regret. In the garage, I boxed her belongings, sweaters she'd knitted during sleepless nights, novels with dog-eared pages where she'd underlined phrases like, "Love is not consolation, it is light." A shoebox of sonograms, the grainy images now warped by time. The red dress I left hanging, a carcass on the door. Let her return to a hollowed shell. Let her feel the absence she'd carved into me. The locksmith whistled as he worked. "Cheating wife?" he asked, eyeing the wedding portrait I'd face down on the floor. I said nothing. Silence had become my currency. At the office, paranoia seeped into the walls. Clara, my assistant, flinched when I slammed a folder on her desk. "Who's Michael Barnes?" I demanded. Her eyes darted to her phone, screen lit with a text bubble. "Mom, pick up milk. He's in marketing," she stammered. "Why?" I leaned in, close enough to smell her lavender hand sanitizer. Pull his personnel file. Every email. Every expense report. She hesitated. "HR requires a reason." "I'm your reason." Later, I found her crying in the stairwell. Her muffled sob, unhinged, bounced off concrete. I retreated, the word clinging like a burr. The motel's neon sign flickered, vacancy. Room 12 reeked of mildew and microwave noodles. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her suitcase spilling lace and lithium prescriptions. The pregnancy test lay between us, a plastic exclamation mark. "I'm keeping it," she said, voice frayed. Her fingers traced her stomach, a gesture so tender it felt like violence. I stared at the carpet, stained with decades of other people's disasters. "You'll ruin him." She laughed, a brittle sound. "You already did that." Outside, a truck engine roared. Headlights swept the room, illuminating her face, smudged mascara, chapped lips. For a heartbeat, she was 22 again, begging me to stay after her first panic attack. "Don't leave me here," she'd whispered. I promised. Now I stood. The door groaned on its hinges. Her voice chased me into the parking lot. "You don't get to abandon us twice." Rain soaked through my shirt. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles bleached. The motel light died behind me. The bar's neon sign buzzed like a dying insect. The rusty nail. Michael Barnes's LinkedIn photo glowed on my phone. Smug grin, tailored suit, a Rolex peeking from his cuff. The same watch his embezzling father had worn. I ordered bourbon, the burn mirroring the acid in my gut. Beside me, a man slurred about his ex-wife. "Took my dog and my Porsche," he hiccuped. I slid a $50 across the sticky counter. "Use the bathroom." When he stumbled away, I pocketed his phone. Too easy. Drunks make perfect patsies. Back in the parking lot, I texted Michael's number from the stolen device. "Meet me at the Belmont." Room 214. Now. The same room from the hotel receipt. Let him explain that to his wife. Emily's brother, Daniel, taught 3rd grade. His Facebook photos showed chalkboard art lunchboxes, a wedding ring. Innocent, irrelevant, but my PI's report noted a $15,000 deposit into his account 2 weeks prior. From Emily, I called him at dawn. "Why is she paying you?" Static. A shaky breath. "She's scared. Wanted a safety net." Safety from what? The line went dead. By noon, anonymous emails flooded his school board. Mr. Daniels accused of inappropriate conduct with a parent. Fictional, but the phrasing was precise, a skill honed in boardrooms. Let him drown in due process. The pregnancy test sat on my desk, its plastic shell reflecting the blue glare of my laptop. I'd Googled false positives. 1% chance. 99% certainty. Emily's voicemail played for the 47th time. "Jacob, I'm at the clinic. They need your signature for..." Delete. At midnight, I drove to the hospital. The maternity ward glowed like a spaceship. Through the glass, a nurse rocked a swaddled newborn. Tiny fists waved, perfect, furious. My phone buzzed. A photo from the PI, Michael exiting the Belmont Collar Askew. His wife's car idled across the street. I texted Emily, "Check your email." The nursery mobile spun in my rearview mirror, elephants blurring into ghosts. The boardroom hummed with the sterile glow of PowerPoint slides. Quarterly earnings. Growth projections. A pie chart dissected our profits into bloodless fractions. My fingers drummed the mahogany table, syncopated with the vibration of my silenced phone. Buzz. Buzz. Emily's face flashed on the screen, 21 missed calls. Michael's termination made the morning news. The anchor's voice dripped faux sympathy. Barnes resigns amid scandal. Footage showed him shielding his face from cameras, his wife's diamond hand clawing his arm. The Rolex was gone. Clara slid a memo across the table. HR requests a meeting. Her pen trembled. I crumpled the paper, the sound like dry bone. Emily waited at our old cafe, the one with chip mugs and oat milk lattes. She'd chosen the corner booth where we'd first discussed having kids. Her hoodie swallowed her frame, sleeves pulled over raw fingertips. The pregnancy test lay between us, its expiration date passed. "You ruined him," she said, voice sandpapered. "I stir my coffee black and cold." "You did that when you fucked him." Her laugh was a wheeze. "You think he mattered?" She leaned in, her breath sour with sleeplessness. "I wanted you to fight. To choose us." The cafe door jingled. A couple pushed a stroller past us, the baby's cries sharp as sirens. Emily flinched. "Sign the divorce papers," I said. She palmed the test, edges cracking. "Meet your son first." The hospital hallway stretched, fluorescent and endless. Room 307 smelled of antiseptic and wilted carnations. Emily slept in a plastic chair, her cheek pressed to the incubator's glass. Inside, wires cocooned a tiny body, skin translucent, chest fluttering like a wounded bird. A nurse tapped my shoulder. "He's stable now." Stable. A word for appliances, not sons. Emily stirred, her eyes bloodshot galaxies. "His lungs, they're not." She trailed off, fingers brushing the glass. A nameplate read Colin Jacobs. I stepped back. The exit sign buzzed, green and relentless. "Hold him," she whispered. My shoes squeaked against the linoleum. Retreating? Always retreating. In the parking lot, I vomited bile onto asphalt. The Rolex, Michael's stolen from the bar, dug into my wrist. I hurled it into traffic. A taxi screeched, metal sparking. The lawyer's letter arrived in a crisp envelope, its edges sharp enough to draw blood. Full custody denied. Supervised visits only. The words blurred as I stood in the nursery, now a storage room for half-packed boxes. Dust motes swirled in the slatted light, settling on the disassembled crib. The elephants from the mobile lay in a drawer, one missing a trunk, chewed off during a teething nightmare I'd never witnessed. Emily's scarf hung on the doorknob, silk fraying at the ends. I pressed it to my face, inhaling faded lavender and hospital sterility. For a moment, I was back in our college apartment, her laughter echoing as she tied that scarf over my eyes during the snowball fight. "You're cheating," I'd shouted, grinning. She'd kissed me, cold nose against my cheek. Only a little. The memory curdled. I hurled the scarf into a donation bin, its fabric catching on a nail, dangling like a noose. The visitation room reeked of sanitized toys and unspoken regrets. Colin squirmed in the social worker's arms, his cries thin and reedy. Emily hovered by the door, arms crossed, a sentinel of spite. "He needs skin contact," the worker said, offering the bundle. My hands froze mid-reach. Colin's face scrunched, a miniature of Emily's rage. "He hates me already," I muttered. The worker smiled, practiced and pitiful. "Newborns don't hate." But when I brushed his cheek, he wailed, a sound that bypassed eardrums and speared straight into the marrow. Emily smirked. The social worker's pager buzzed. "5 more minutes," she said, slipping out. Alone, Emily stepped forward. "You look terrible." "You look alive," I shot back. Her smile faltered. She glanced at Colin, now silent in my stiff arms. "He has your eyes." I stood abruptly, handing him back. Lucky him. Home was a mausoleum. I smashed the photo frames, Emily in her red dress, our Coney Island Ferris wheel snapshot the sonogram. Glass shards bit into my palms, blood smearing the Rolex I'd fished from the gutter. In the garage, I lit a match. The PI's files curled to ash, hotel receipts, surveillance logs, Daniel's bank records. Flakes floated upward, ghosts of my meticulous vengeance. The phone rang. Clara's name flashed. Ileti Tseti. Midnight found me in the ER, glass embedded in my fist. The nurse frowned at my silence. Domestic dispute? I stared at the wall, where a poster showed a smiling family. It's never too late to ask for help. The stitches pulled tight. I left before the anesthetic wore off. The obituary appeared on a Tuesday. Emily Grace Collins, 34, survived by son Colin. The thumbnail photo showed her leaning against a rusted jungle gym, hair windblown, smile strained at the edges. I'd taken that photo years ago, back when playgrounds still felt like hope. The cause of death, complications from chronic illness. A lie. The truth festered in the subtext, found unresponsive in a motel bathtub, empty pill bottles glittering like confetti. I booked a flight to Phoenix. The funeral home's waiting room reeked of lilies and industrial cleaner. Collins sat in the corner, legs swinging under a chair too large for his 7-year-old frame. He clutched a stuffed elephant missing a trunk. My throat tightened. The director handed me a sealed envelope. "She left this for you." Emily's handwriting bled through the paper. Jacob. I pocketed it unopened. Some ghosts refuse burial. Her grave was a raw wound in the earth, dirt still unsettled. Colin knelt, tracing the dates on the headstone. 1989 to 2023. He looked up, eyes reflecting her exact shade of storm gray. Did you love her? The question hung between us, barbed and inevitable. I crouched, knees protesting. Once, he poked the elephant's ragged ear. She said you hated us. A crow cawed overhead. I placed the trunkless toy on the grave. Emily's scarf, retrieved from the donation bin, fluttered in the wind, snagging on a thorn bush. Colin reached for it, but I pulled him back. "Leave it." He yanked free. "You don't get to tell me what to do." Her defiance distilled. The new apartment stank of takeout and regret. My wife, Lila, stood at the window, her silhouette sharp as a paper cut. She'd found the obituary clipping creased from my pocket. "You lied," she said, not turning. I unclenched my fist, revealing Colin's elephant. "It's complicated." She laughed, brittle. "Complicated. Right." Her suitcase yawned open on the bed, half-packed. A pregnancy test peeked from her toiletry bag, negative. Again, I reached for her shoulder. She recoiled. "Don't." The door slammed. Through the blinds, I watched her hail a cab, heels clicking a Morse code I'd never decipher. Colin's toy vibrated in my palm. I squeezed until the stitching split, stuffing spilling like innards. In the bathroom mirror, my father's face stared back, hollowed, vindictive. I smashed the glass. The Foster home smelled of bleach and overcooked oatmeal. Colin's social worker, a woman with clipboard armor, blocked the doorway. "He's adjusting," she said, though the screams behind her suggested otherwise. A toddler hurled a toy truck. It skidded my feet, wheels spinning. Colin sat cross-legged in the corner, sketching furiously on a torn coloring book. The trunkless elephant lay discarded nearby, stuffing leaking like a gutted animal. I placed a gift bag on the table, a new elephant, pristine and whole. Colin didn't look up. His crayon snapped, red wax bleeding across the page. The social worker sighed. He's been defiant. Outside, rain blurred the playground. A swing creaked empty. I slid the old elephant from my coat, its matted fur still smelling of Emily's motel shampoo. Colin's eyes flickered. For a heartbeat, he looked like her, furious, fragile. Then he ripped the drawing, storm gray eyes glaring. "Go away." Dad's nursing home reeked of urine and despair. He stared at the wall, mouth slack, a dried rivulet of oatmeal on his chin. The nurse handed me a shoebox. "Found this in his closet. Inside, letters. Dozens yellowed and brittle. Mom's looping script. 'I'm sorry, Thomas.' The affair meant nothing. Dad's replies unsent. You'll regret this. I'll make sure he knows. A photo slipped free. Mom holding me as a baby, her smile strained, Dad's shadow looming behind him. The monitor beeped. Dad's hand twitched. I gripped it, cold and papery. Did you hate her? I whispered. His eyelids fluttered. A tear or reflex, the nurse returned with pills. He's agitated today. I left the box at his feet. Let him rot with his ghosts. The motel's vacancy sign flickered, same as the night Emily died. Room 12's door groaned, hinges rusted shut. The tub's porcelain was stained, cracks spiderwebbing like veins. I traced the edge where she'd slumped, her wrist dangling over cold metal. The envelope burned in my pocket. Emily's last words. Jacob, Colin cries like you do. Silent like it's shameful. I try to hate you. Failed. Forgive me. For all of it. A cockroach skittered across the floor. I crumpled the letter, then smoothed it, the creases permanent. Outside, a cop car idled. The officer shone a light. Everything okay? I pocketed the elephant. Just visiting. He nodded, wary. Don't stay long. The door clicked shut. I lay on the stained carpet, staring at the water spot on the ceiling. Rorschach blot morphing between a heart and a fist. The courthouse steps were slick with rain, the sky a bruised purple. Colin stood under the social worker's umbrella, clutching the new elephant. His sneakers, too bright against the gray, squeaked as he shuffled. The judge had granted emancipation. At midnight, the decree still warm from the printer. 17 years old, but his eyes were older, hardened by foster care rotations and unanswered letters. I extended an envelope. College fund paperwork and signed. It's yours. No conditions. He stared at my hand, rain dripping off his nose. Mom said you'd try to buy me. The word stung, precise as a scalpel. I let the envelope fall, soggy between us. It's not buying. It's fixing. He laughed, Emily's laugh, jagged and raw. Some things don't fix. The social worker herded him toward a waiting car. Colin paused, tossed the trunkless elephant into a puddle. It floated, stuffing bloating like a corpse. The old house had been condemned, boards nailed over windows like bandages. I pried one loose, splinters embedding under my nails. Inside, the nursery walls still screamed yellow. The crib lay in pieces, termite-riddled, the mobiles, elephants fossilized in dust. In the closet, I found Emily's shoebox of sonograms. Beneath them, a sealed envelope addressed to Colin in her shaky script. I traced the letters, ink smudged by tears or time. The floor creaked. A feral cat darted past, its yowl echoing Colin's infant cries. I pocketed the letter, gilt a stone in my throat, the cemetery at dawn. Emily's headstone had weathered, the dates blurred. I placed the trunkless elephant beside it, stuffing long since scattered. Colin's emancipation papers rustled in my coat, along with her unopened letter. A jogger passed, earbuds blasting static. The world moved on, relentless. I knelt, fingers brushing cold granite. I'm sorry. The wind swallowed it. At the gate, a figure lingered. Colin, hoodie pulled low. He approached, knelt, and placed the new elephant beside the old. No words. Just the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic. When he left, he took the envelope. Didn't open it. I stayed until twilight, the headstone's shadow stretching toward the highway. Somewhere, a truck shifted gears, grinding forward. One story may be ending, but the excitement never stops. Don't wait. Jump right into the next one and keep the thrill alive.